So, how does a guy go from being an Eagle Scout to a darknet kingpin? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the infamous online black market, Silk Road. It's a journey that winds through libertarian philosophy, brand new technology, a global FBI manhunt, and, believe it or not, a stunning presidential pardon.
Before Silk Road became a name synonymous with online crime, this is what its creator, Ross Ulbricht, put on his public LinkedIn page. He wasn't calling it a criminal enterprise. No, he framed it as this grand philosophical experiment. And really, this one sentence, it's the key to understanding everything that drove him. This desire to carve out a space completely free from government control.
And that right there, that's the central conflict of this whole story, isn't it? On one side, you've got the Ross Ulbricht everyone knew. The bright kid from Texas, Eagle Scout, a guy with a master's degree in material science. But on the other side, the man nobody knew, the operator of a billion-dollar digital narcotics empire. So the question is, how on earth did one become the other?
Well, to answer that, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to look at the man and the philosophy that sparked the whole thing.
What's so wild is just how normal Ulbricht's background was. We're talking Austin, Texas, an Eagle Scout. This guy was academically brilliant with degrees in physics and material science. But then, while he was at Penn State, something clicked. He got really into libertarian economic theory. And this wasn't just some casual interest. It became his blueprint. He took principles like the non-aggression principle and literally built them into the rules of the site, forbidding the sale of anything meant to harm or defraud people. In his mind, he was creating a purely voluntary market.
And then you see this, from his own personal diary. This is the exact moment that philosophical idea becomes something concrete and, well, deeply illegal. This was the vision, right here, a perfect libertarian marketplace, totally anonymous and completely outside the reach of any government on Earth.
Okay, so an idea is one thing, but actually building it, that's a whole other story. Ulbricht needed some very specific tools to make this anonymous world a reality, starting with the tech that would hide the whole operation.
So, pillar number 1, access. How do you even get to a website without leaving a trace? The answer was something called the Tor network. Think of it like this. It takes your internet connection and bounces it through a whole bunch of encrypted servers all over the world. The end result? It's almost impossible to trace where you're coming from. Silk Road wasn't on the regular internet. It was a hidden service on this network, basically invisible. Okay, so you've got access. Now, pillar number 2, how do you pay for things? Obviously, credit cards and bank transfers were a no-go. They leave a perfect paper trail. So Ulbricht turned to this new kind of obscure digital currency at the time, Bitcoin. It allowed for pseudonymous transactions, meaning money could change hands without being directly tied to your real name. This was the financial engine that was going to power his whole anonymous economy.
So when you put it all together, the whole process for a user was, well, it was deceptively simple. You'd fire up Tor to get to the site, then you'd browse listings for, drugs and other illegal stuff, just like you're on Amazon or eBay. You'd pay with Bitcoin, and then the package just shows up in the mail. It was seamless, it was anonymous, and man, was it successful.
And to run this whole empire, Ulbricht needed a persona. He chose Dread Pirate Roberts. Yeah, that's a reference to The Princess Bride. The character whose name is passed down from one person to the next. And that was the point. It wasn't just a username. He was trying to build this myth, this idea that the leader of Silk Road wasn't just one guy, but some immortal, untouchable concept.
But, no fortress is ever truly impenetrable. And as Silk Road got bigger and bigger, law enforcement became more and more determined to find the man behind the curtain. The digital manhunt for the Dread Pirate Roberts was officially on.
So how did they find him? Well, it's a story of how tiny, tiny cracks can bring down a whole fortress. The big breakthrough came from an IRS investigator, a guy named Gary Alford. He was digging around and found a really early post on a forum announcing Silk Road from a user named Altoid. Okay, interesting. But then he finds another post from Altoid asking for programming help, and you're not going to believe this. He included an email address, an email that had the name Ross Ulbricht right in it. You can't make this stuff up. Combine that massive mistake with undercover agents noticing his chat times lined up at the Pacific time zone, plus law enforcement grabbing a key server in Iceland, and suddenly this ghost in the machine starts to look a whole lot like a real person living in San Francisco. And the way they finally got him, it was pure spy movie stuff.
they tracked him to a public library in San Francisco. He's just sitting there, laptop open, logged into the Silk Road admin panel. Now, the big fear is that he'll see them coming and just slam the laptop shut, encrypting everything. So 2 FBI agents start staging this loud, distracting fake fight, like a couple having a huge argument. Ulbricht, like anyone else would, turns his head to see what all the commotion is about. And in that split second, another agent just swoops in, grabs the open laptop, and sticks a flash drive in to copy all the evidence. Just like that, the game was over.
And the charges they hit him with, they were serious. This wasn't just about selling drugs, no. They charged him with running a massive, ongoing criminal enterprise.
So, with the mastermind in cuffs, the whole story shifts to the courtroom. And the trial, well, it led to a sentence that honestly shocked pretty much everyone, even seasoned legal experts.
And the final sentence? Absolutely staggering. 2 life sentences, plus 40 years, with no chance of parole. And remember, this was for a guy with 0 prior criminal record.
So you have to ask, why was the sentence so harsh? I mean, it's a huge question. And this really lays out the 2 sides of the debate. On the one hand, the prosecution's case was built on the sheer scale of the drug trafficking. They also pointed to 6 overdose deaths that were linked to drugs bought on the site. And then there was this bombshell, allegations that Ulbricht had tried to hire hitmen to protect his identity. But then you have the other side. The defense and his supporters, they argued that the actual charges he was convicted of were non-violent. They said the sentence was way, way harsher than what other major drug kingpins get. And they pointed to a huge problem with the investigation. 2 of the federal agents on the case were later convicted themselves for corruption for literally stealing Bitcoin from Silk Road.
But despite all those arguments, the legal system didn't budge. Ulbricht's appeals were shot down at every single level, right up to the Supreme Court. It really looked like his fate was sealed. He was going to die in prison.
But then came a final chapter that absolutely no one saw coming. The fight was about to move out of the courtroom and into the White House.
See, for years, there was this really dedicated Free Ross movement, led by his mom, Lynn. They were relentless. They got over 500,000 signatures on a petition arguing the sentence was a huge miscarriage of justice for a non-violent, first-time offender. And they built this really interesting coalition. You had libertarians, crypto people, prison reform advocates, all on the same side. And then in May 2024, they went from a grassroots movement to national politics. At the Libertarian National Convention, Donald Trump got on stage and made a direct promise. If he got elected, he would commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence.
And sure enough, on January 21st, 2025, he did it. In a post on his social media platform, Trump called the sentence ridiculous and flat out announced he had just signed a full and unconditional pardon for Ross.
And just like that, it was over. After serving 12 years of what was supposed to be a double life sentence, Ross Ulbricht walked out of prison a free man. Now, as you can imagine, the decision was immediately controversial. A lot of people, like this writer from The Nation magazine, were quick to point out what they saw as a huge contradiction. You have Donald Trump, who on many occasions had advocated for the death penalty for drug dealers, now pardoning the man who created one of the biggest online drug markets in history.
And so that's where we're left with these huge, complicated questions. What do you think? Was Ross Ulbricht a libertarian visionary who built a tool for freedom? Or was he just a high-tech drug lord? Was his sentence of 2 life terms a just punishment for the harm he caused? Or was it a massive overreach by the justice system? And that final pardon, was it an act of mercy? Or was it just pure politics at play? The story of the Dread Pirate Roberts might be over, but the debate about his legacy, well, that's really just getting started.